Today, I want to answer the question, is willpower limited or not? And here's what I think, just to get straight to the point. I think it doesn't really matter. What matters is how it practically affects you and how you can operate within those limitations, whatever they may be for you. They're going to differ from each of us to help you still do what you want to do. That to me is success. Intention becoming behavior. Can you behave the way you intend to? If you can, beautiful. All you need to do is get better intentions and you increase your ability. Most of us know what to do. As Derek Sivers beautifully says, if information were the answer, we'd all be six-pack billionaires, right? That's true, I think, for most of us. So then the question becomes, how can I bridge that intention behavior gap? And the way I've found best for me to do that reliably on an ongoing basis is not just relying on willpower, consciousness, grit. That's great for sometimes. But the underlying current, like that works for a few days and all that stuff, but not in the long term for me. So what I found to work is using that willpower, limiting as it is, can we use that willpower to create the habits that will help us get to where we want to go, be who we want to be? Humans are both, right? We're stuck in this bothness of reality, part unconscious, part conscious, vice versa, different times, overlapping, all these different activities and our previous conceptions of them all create this unique combination of the two, or teeter-totter experience of them. So the better we can understand ours for these different activities, the better we can get at going from intention to behavior, but that behavior to habit, right? Because ultimately we want that habit to become part of us, embody it, and make that part of our identity. Here's the way that's helped me look at it. If we look at both ends of the extreme, willpower is limited, willpower is not limited. Let's take one at a time. Willpower is limited. What's the best way to operate with this belief set? If willpower is limited, then what I can do is use that willpower, invest it into my habit self, using that willpower to create good context, make that habit loop, reinforce it, repeat it, and then eventually it becomes this automatic habit that we do because of our context cue. That's a great mechanism right there. If you get good at that, you get great at behaving the way you intend to, which is ultimately what we want. But if we switch to the other side, willpower is not limited. Oh shit, I can grit my way through anything. I can do anything if I believe it, if it's here, right? So you can have that really long night or that long weekend, push through that project for that deadline, whatever it is. Now, in my experience, these both have their pros and their cons. The grit and the willpower is great for those short-term sprints, but life is not just a sprint. Sure, there are sprint times, but we still need this marathon approach, this marathon mentality, which comes from believing that willpower is this limited resource that we can use, leverage to become habit. So I'm thinking this through in real time, obviously. The habit approach, I feel, is for that week, for the month, for the year. You want to get good habits so that they propel you to that future. But on the day, in the moment, that's when you can really use that grit to make sure you're on the right track. Now, realistically, if we boil down the human situation, moving from one behavior to the next in a successful fashion, going from the behavior you want to the next one you want to, is a beautiful skill. That is the highest point of leverage that I think we have as humans to determine what we do. It's that switching point, the shifting of the train track, the turning of the car wheel, being habit and willpower approach. So if we can identify those switching moments and get very good at controlling them through both of these avenues, right? We're using the habit approach, we're using the willpower approach, getting ourselves to do that thing. Ultimately, if we can switch from one to the next, using our willpower when we need it, but hopefully creating those habits underlying that create that automatic transition, that's when we're really going to be operating best on both fronts. And the better we can get at dancing with dichotomy, managing these paradoxes, tip of the cap to Escher Perel, the better we can get at that, the better we can understand that when we do this, when we take both sides, opposite extremes, operate under those both belief sets, even though they're mutually exclusive, right? Coming back to First-Rate Intelligence from F. Scott Fitzgerald, the better we can manage these two things simultaneously, the more effective we're going to be in our intention, behavior, closing of that gap, right? Again, that to me is success. And if you believe the same, I highly suggest you take this approach. Using your willpower to create the habits that are going to help you. All right, that was over here. Using your willpower to create the habits that are going to help you do what you want to do. And when you don't quite have these yet, yeah, you're going to have a little extra reliance on the willpower. But if you only use willpower to do a behavior, that's a very short-term approach. What we ultimately want to do is use that willpower to create the habit so that the habit is almost this forward momentum, and the willpower can be used for this left to right, getting back on track. If you're trying to rely on your willpower to go forward, that's going to be very short-lived. Okay, or at least, again, is my experience. And if you have a similar experience with that, then this is why I am suggesting this. Take the habit first approach, invest your willpower into your habit so that you can make that the path of least resistance, the one that you're likely to take. And then when you don't, you can use that willpower to get back on track, as opposed to trying to get on track with that. So instead of intention behavior, let's go one step further, intention habit. If we can close that gap, then we're setting ourselves up in a beautiful way, creating that foundation for the behaviors that will really help us live the life we want to. And as you notice, I'm not saying what behaviors to gain. These are all dependent on what you want to do, who you want to become. If you can get very, very good at that mechanism, that closing of the gap of behavior and intention by going one step further, habit to intention, then you are going to be so much better off. It's a long-term approach, and you're not necessarily going to experience the benefit immediately. But once you do gain that habit, once you do outsource your willpower to the habit self, to the context, then you're going to be able to use that willpower on something else that's important to you. Right? It's this one at a time situation that we want to go forward with. So to make it clear, we can't operate with the habit first mindset and the willpower first mindset. The willpower first is better for the day, the grit, the moment, in my opinion. The habit is better for the week, the month, the year. Now, if we can use both of these, right? I think over-reliance on any of them is going to be harmful. If you over-rely on willpower, you're not going to get that long-term success. If you over-rely on habit, you're not going to be able to go forward as much as you want to, because you're not going to be able to use that grit to get yourself to do the thing you want to. You need both. So how do you embody the understanding that you need both, if you agree that we do? That's my challenge to you. And if you have any questions or any of that wasn't quite clear, I'm still, as you can see, working through this myself. And I'm just putting it out there to join you on the journey of trying to live a good life by understanding our limitations and operating within them. Changing what you can, but also knowing what you can't and leveraging that. Okay, understanding that, hey, we might not have all this grit all the time. But that's okay, because we have this backup system that we can use our grit to change our habits, create that current that will propel us to that future we want. All right, I'm Chris with Hack That Habit. Hit me up below if you have any questions and if you want to work with me. I'll see you on the other side of what? I have no idea, but that's how I'm ending this video. Oh my God. Oh, that was fun.